Well, damn, that that escalated quickly. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. You know, all those people who were saying that the tone of this show was all over the place and they couldn't quite get the jibe, this might be the episode you might want to hold on for. This is the one that all those seeds were being planted to kind of be like, turn this entire series on its head, because this episode goes for it. The fifth episode of Tulsa King is called Token Joe, and as we learned in the last episode, Dwight's brother Joe has passed away, and so he's returning back to New York to go pay his respects and go to the services, thus leaving the stuff that's happening in Tulsa kind of on its own. So there we get a little bit of two lanes of this story. We get the New York story, and we get the stuff that's happening in Tulsa. We open up with Dwight pulling up to the viewing. So for people who haven't gone to funerals before, the day before the funeral, there's a viewing for the family and close relatives. They kind of come and see the body. It can be morbid to some folks as you're watching like the dead physical form of whomever it is you lost there, but you're coming to show your respects to the family. Dwight walks in and shows up. His sister greets him and hugs him. She's angry at him, but she also hasn't seen her brother in over 20 years. Dwight doesn't know who in the home is Christina. Unfortunately, he doesn't know who the grown-up Christina looks like. So he's like, is Christina here? And she's like, yep, but let's not do that first. Let's go pay our respects to Joe. So he goes over to the casket to see his brother, and they have a bit of a moment. His sister leads him, and he has a moment one-on-one. He also meets he also speaks with the sister-in-law, Joe's wife, and gives his condolences. And she says, "I'm appreciative of you being here." He then turns around and he sees who he believes to be Christina. And Christina kind of acknowledges that she is him, and they have a moment and they look, but there's no words shared between the two of them. She doesn't go over to him. She looks nervous. She turns back to her husband to kind of get some type of solace. And he just says this isn't the time for this. And he walks out. He talks to his sister outside, who gives him a little bit of crap too. And he's like, "Look, I will be here for the funeral tomorrow. But I would like to say something." She's like, "That's not a good idea. I don't think that's going to work." And you can tell it affects him. It hits him hard, but he accepts that and he goes away. Once he leaves, he gets a call from Dickie, who learns through the grapevine that he is in town. And Dickie's not too pleased about that. He's like, "Hey, yo, you let me know when you're in town." And he's like, "Yo, I need you tomorrow." And Dwight tells him, like, "My brother's funeral is tomorrow." I was like, yeah. That's your family, but we are family too. I need you tomorrow, and you need to be here. And Dwight's like, okay. He's not going to pass up his brother's funeral. Like, the whole reason he's here is for his brother's funeral. He's not going to also make himself look worse to Christina for this family who may or may not have tried to put a hit out on him. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, shit's getting real. The local cops are having a conversation. They're basically being told by the head, Mike McAdam, the top dog of the whole thing, the person who blew up, who gave the code to basically blow up and beat up his man, the head of the biker gang, who is also the king of apparently selling nitrous in Oklahoma, something that Dwight befuddlingly did not know. They are starting to say, "Hey, we got some screws to tighten up and to tie up some loose ends, because our boss is not happy and we work for him. So we need to figure out what the hell's happening and who's the person responsible for selling all of this stuff." And so they have a plate of who was the person who was dealing with the nitrous at these said parties. They are given Tyson's plates, and unfortunately they pull over Tyson and arrest him and detain him and put him in prison, in jail, not prison. There's a difference. Puts him in jail. But Dwight does not respond to outreach, because Dwight's handling his own stuff, his family stuff there. Tyson's trying to call, doesn't get any response. So a lot of the times where Tyson has been like, "Hey, I work for him. He's got my back. We're together. We're a team." This time he's sort of being left out there on his own. And so that may come back to not bite Dwight, but it may have Tyson sort of have a second thoughts like, "Hey, I should probably I should probably call my father, or I should be with him. Bodie also gets jammed up. And Bodie gets jammed up, held at knife point, gets bagged and kind of threatened, saying, "Hey, who's responsible for this? Who's the one who you? How do you know Tyson? How's his number? Because they unlocked Tyson's phone in prison by giving him. He gives his code up for getting privileges to go pee in private, and then that's when they find Bodie. They get a hold of Bodie. They threaten him, and they're trying to get to who is the head of this. And he's like, "Yeah, I barely know Tyson. It's like we're all doing. I'm being sort of." Blackmailed, or what was I forgot what the term is, but I'm being coerced into working for Dwight Manfredi. And he's like, okay, Dwight's the guy. And then they Black Adam basically tells him like, hey, okay, cool. Here's what we're gonna do. I need you to go give a message to that pretty boy that's at that bar, and let them know that we mean business and shut things down. So they take Bodie by bag to Mitch. Mitch is just chilling with his some lady friends. He's a good looking dude, having a good time at the bar. The cops come in and they're like, "Hey, yo, does this ragamuffin belong to you?" And Mitch's like, "Depends." And he gives him stuff like, "Hey, yo, you need to shut things down, or else." And my man's like, "Hold on, I don't know who the hell you think you're coming in to talk to, but you're on native ground right now, so you don't have any jurisdiction here. I'm gonna need you to get the hell out." And it's at that point the cops realize, like, oh yeah, we don't have jurisdiction here, and the little bloviating that we're planning to come do doesn't quite work here. They're like, cool, we'll see you around, and they leave. And then Mitch kind of takes Bodie over and says, like, hey man, how's it going? Kind of take him under his wing. Mitch is aware that Dwight's gone, so Mitch is kind of like the second in command. So he's sort of supposed to be cleaning things up, which I don't think that message got to Tyson. Tyson probably should have called Mitch as opposed to calling Dwight, who's indisposed. The next day comes, and Dwight sort of has a dinner luncheon for the family. So Tina, his sister-in-law, all of their kids are at this really high-end restaurant that doesn't seem like would have been Uncle Joe's sort of spot or his vibe. But it is a gesture from Dwight. He has paid off the funeral expenses, though the family did not ask for him to, and he is paid for this nice luncheon. And Tina sort of calls him out on the overpaying gestures that he's giving. He's like, Uncle Joe wouldn't want this, like this expensive ass ravioli. Like Uncle Joe's a simple man; he doesn't want any of this. But Dwight is trying to give his best foot forward to say, hey, no, I got it. I wasn't here. I'm trying to do something. So it is taken both as he is being sincere, but he's also kind of just throwing his money around and showing that he is still part of the business, if you will, which is kind of the problem in the first place. It's his only way of do things. It's all he knows. Coming from prison, he's like, I gotta go back into life. That he's spending this money, but he's also been showing his family that, hey, I'm still in this. But it's his only way that he has really to say, hey, I'm sorry. Um, he has a weird moment where he tries to check Tina's husband about not asking for his blessing. He's like, I have a phone wherever I'm at. Like, I'm in the same place. You can ask me. And she's like, really? You got the balls to come in and say this about me? And notice she doesn't ever call her dad by dad. She says calls him by his first name, Dwight. She's like, saying dad doesn't feel right. It's too personal. You haven't earned that right. So they have a bit more of a discourse, and it gets ugly. And Tina tries to leave, and then Dwight attempts to do a toast. The toast feels a little rough, but he's basically saying like, "Hey, can we let the past be the past and let's work on the future?" Tina hears it, but she's like, "Nah, I gotta leave," and she says goodbye to her aunt, and then she takes off. Once the luncheon's over, Dwight then goes to meet up with Chicky and the crew at the hospital. And Chicky sort of checks him, like, hey, look, next time I tell you to come, I'm gonna need you to come. And Dwight at that point is like, if you want that, Cocker Spaniels are good. They answer on the call, and Chicky's kind of like, wait, what the hell did you just like? He's sort of brushing back on him. And this isn't the time. Dwight right now is in his emotions. His daughter's not speaking to him. He's like, I don't have the time for this. Plus, I still don't know where you guys really stand. It's a bit of a contentious point. He has a moment again where he gets into the capo, Chicky's capo, and he's kind of late. They start beefing a little bit. But Chicky separates it, and Haslam says, hey, look, I'm going to need you here tomorrow. We'll work on that tomorrow. He calls Stacy because it's sort of the one voice of reason that he has right now, which is weird because she's not altogether there. But he just needs a good voice to kind of get through the muck of what's going on. And he tells him like, "Hey, she's not talking to me," and she just says, "Keep trying." He's like, "You think that'll work?" And she's like, "Wait, hell if I know. Like, why would you go to her for this type of advice?" But it's something that he kind of needs to hear to keep going. She also gives him a warning, like, "Hey, I know you're not here. Just as a heads up, the people that have the nitrous that you're kind of going into, the sale that you're doing, it goes a little deeper than you're thinking." And he's like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "I can't talk about it on the phone, but just be aware, be careful." To that point, the Dwight tries to reach out to Tyson, and Tyson can't answer. Dwight reaches out to Bodie too, and they kind of hear his voice. So they're like, "Who's that person?" So that's how all that sort of starts getting connected. He then calls Joe's voicemail. He doesn't go to the funeral. He just thinks it would be awkward, uncomfortable. He doesn't go to the funeral. But the speech that he was trying to make at that funeral, he makes over the voicemail of Joe's home, and says all the things that he wanted to say in that moment. It's very heartfelt. It's very sincere. It's very beautifully done. And both his sister and Joe's wife hear it in real time because they're around the voicemail to hear it all. Back in Oklahoma, in addition to all the stuff that's been happening with the police, Bodie, Tyson, and Mitch, Manny has sort of been threatened by Black McAdams' female, the woman who was instigating, saying, "Hey, they weak, they pussies," and all that stuff. She's basically threatened Manny and Armand, if you will, to let them know, like, "Hey, maybe we want to be careful who you're running with. We know who you are." And Manny's kind of like, "Wait, what? What the hell are you talking about?" And the next day he comes back and reaches out to her again. He's like, "What was all that about?" He's like, "Well, look, I know some of the people you're rolling with right now. And my man is the number two over there for the Black McAdam group. And we know. You might just want to stand down." And he's like, "What's some biker gang? What are y'all about?" She's like, "Google us." And he does. And that's when he sees that what he has put himself into, this tough guy act that he's now put himself back into, this world that he's reopened himself to, which has given him some sort of attitude, some fight, some bite, some bark back, is now extremely dangerous. So all the folks in Oklahoma where Dwight is away have started to sort of learn what it is that they've gotten themselves into. And now their lead is not there to sort of help clean things up. And then he messes some things up that brings even more, that is about to bring even more heat on everything that they do. Dwight then goes to Tina's flower shop, where she works, and he wants to just have a one-on-one. And they do. They get under the hood a little bit. It is painful. She lets him know that, like, "Hey, you hurt me. You've been gone for 25 years. I can't call you dad. You're Dwight to me, or Mr. Manfredi. It's one or the other." Dwight asks to see the grandkids, and she just kind of ignores all of that. She's like, "No, I can't do that." She's like, there is a glimmer every time that I see you, every time I hear your voice, there's a glimmer that happens to me of that little girl that wants her dad. But you're a bad bet." He's like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Look, honestly, what the hell are you doing in Oklahoma?" She knows. She's like, "Dad, everybody knows you're still in the business. Like, you don't go to Oklahoma just to live. Like, you're doing work over there." And he kind of ignores the question. And she's like, "Yeah, that's why you can't be a part of my life. Like, I can't do this with you. You're going to end up right back where you were in the first place." Dwight then asks, "Hey, with Uncle Joe, and I can tell that you're really sad. Would you have preferred it been me that died instead of Uncle Joe?" She sincerely answers no. But she then lets him know that Uncle Joe was the person that was there for me. Maybe he was drunk as hell in the car at prom, but he was making sure that nothing bad happened to me. He was there for me there. My aunts were there for me there. They were all there for me while you were gone away for 25 years, 20 years. They were there for me. They were there to protect me. I thought that's what you were there for. I thought you had put people in place that were supposed to do that for me as well. But you didn't. This is where things go a little sideways. Because in that, she's like, "You didn't protect me because the guy who was supposed to protect me, the guy who was supposed to watch me when I got of age, your right hand man, Nick, the package, who was supposed to watch me, I learned the hard way why he was called. And then she stops. And Dwight tries to get it out of her. She's like, nope, I can't tell you this because I know you're going to do something bad. And Dwight catches it and gets it. He's like, oh, basically, Nick the Package assaulted his daughter. Um, and she makes him promise that you won't do anything. And he says, okay. We all know that's not going to happen, especially because the story just came. As she said, even though he was drunk, he was there. Uncle Joe was there to protect me. You weren't. The person you put in place to try to protect me caused me physical and emotional harm. And now he's like, oh no, I have to be there to protect you. Like, I have to stand up there for my honor. One, you guys tried to kill me in the first place, but two, then you were taking out my daughter, like you're trying to take things away, her innocence away from my daughter. Yeah, he's pissed. So he goes to that hospital ready to just wreck shop. But they're not there. The crew, Chicky, Capo, Nick, they're not there. But Pete is. Pete's on the hospital bed. He's there. And for a moment, anger subsides a little bit, and he calmly goes to Pete and sits at his bedside and starts having a conversation and talking about, his funeral, his brother. He's like, oh, would you have been there? Essentially gets to the point where Dwight asks Pete about his team, specifically about Nick, and did he know? And he grabs him by the face and he's like, did you know? And you can tell in that moment, Pete has zero idea what he's talking about. Now, mind you, Pete had already put a hit out on Dwight, so he may have thought this was in relation to that, but Dwight's not there yet. His mindset is now strictly on protecting or sticking up for the honor of his daughter. But it's clear that Pete doesn't know. And he gets his answer from that. He's like, cool, then I'm not taking this out on you. He then makes it to the hideout that Chicky and the crew, the capo and Nick are all staying at. He just comes right in, doesn't say a word, and he commences to beat the ever-living shit out of the package. Like he is. Punch him in the face. He brands his face, burns it on an iron, chokes him up with a telephone cord, drags him around, and then he steps on his head, basically smashing, and blood just spurts all over. He's essentially killed a made man in front of Chicky, in front of the capo, in front of everybody. He's killed him, and then just walks out. And that's how the episode ends. Holy shit. This went from 0 to 100 real quick. This is the first episode that really has no levity in it. It is drama from start to finish. So if anybody's ever saying, like, oh my God, this keeps going from jokey to not, ain't none of that here. This is probably the best episode of the season. And it's not because of the tone, like not having the tonal shift. It's because it's the first time that we start getting the emotional weights that kept happening at the end of episodes throughout the entire thing, but also now sort of the world sort of closing in on Dwight. There's now adversaries. There's now a friction. There's a lot of pain that makes just for great television. We can see that the screws are sort of shortening in on the world in Oklahoma. The Black McAdam gang and all that crew are going to be coming in on Dwight. And they sort of give him a warning that say, hey, back down. But we know Dwight's not going to back down. But now Chicky and Pete have to do something about Dwight. They have to. Like he just came and killed one of their made men. Now, granted, Pete probably is going to put two and two together and say that, oh crap, he did that because he had something to do with his daughter. And probably somebody in that crew knows that already. So they're kind of going to be like, I get it, but you can't just go around knocking people off, especially after you already broke the jaw by Capo. So they're going to have to do something about that too. It's going to be interesting to see how much leeway Pete gives, because Pete did try to take him out, but Pete also is probably like, hey, he didn't say anything. Like he kind of gets a pass. But Chicky and that younger crew, they're not going to take that as a pass. He was already sort of disrespected earlier by saying, hey, when I tell you to come, get over here, this is going to be a little bit more of a slap in the face. So Dwight now is going to have people coming from all ends of the spectrum. And Stacy, as much as she likes to get in that bed with him as an ATF agent, she's eventually going to have to prove her allegiance as well. So he's now got it coming from every which way. And it's going to be fascinating and fun television to see how he gets out of all of this. This was a chef's kiss, fantastic episode of the season. I don't think there's only 8 episodes of the season, But this is a great midway point to kind of kick us off for these final 3 episodes. If I wasn't in already before, my God, I cannot wait to see what happens next week. This was perfection. And it's also going to be interesting to see how Christina responds to Dwight. She told him not to go do this. She knows it's probably going to get her father in trouble. But she also got to be some sense of pride, a little bit, in saying that my dad did stick up for me. But it might be too little too late in that relationship. What did you guys think about this episode of Tulsa King called Token Joe? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. Is it your favorite episode so far? Because it certainly is mine. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.